You're now watching Wayback Wednesday, sponsored by Flora's Glass and Mirror Company, servicing the area since 1977 with residential and commercial work.
Well, good evening, friends, and welcome to another episode of Wayback Wednesday. I'm your host, Randy Adcox. Glad you could join us tonight. We've got a lot of ground to cover tonight, a lot of pictures to share with you. We're going to talk about some old Rocky Mountain laws and show you some pictures of old Rocky Mountain businesses and so forth. Before we get into that, however, I just want to take a moment to say welcome to our newest sponsor, Davenport Motors. We've been very fortunate over the run of this show to have some really good sponsors, and I'm not going to try to mention them all because I'm afraid I'll miss somebody, make somebody mad. I'm not going to do that. But watch the commercials when we come to commercial breaks, because we've got some really good sponsors who've been really great about sponsoring this show and keeping us on the air, so we really appreciate that, and we're tickled pink to have Davenport Motors join us as one of our sponsors. So having said that, by the way, if you'd like to become a sponsor of the show, feel free to give me a call. You can call the station here after the show's over with, and we've gladly line you up and get you a spot on our commercial list there. But we always welcome new sponsors and people who support the show. We appreciate all of you. Going back to last week's show, we had, about 7 or 8, maybe half a dozen pictures that we didn't get to, so we're going to get to those. But during the break between last week's show and this week's show, I heard from a few of you, and a couple things was brought to my attention, and I want to just kind of touch on those tonight. One of them was, you may remember, those of you that have been around Rocky Mountain a while, remember the blue laws in Rocky Mountain. I say laws plural because there's been some changes over the years, and the younger generation probably don't know anything about a blue law, but it certainly was in place. And I did a little research tonight before tonight's show, and I was a bit surprised at how long blue laws have been in existence and how far they go back in history, not just in Rocky Mountain or in North Carolina or in the United States, but all the way back to the 1700s in Europe and France and Germany and so forth. A lot of history behind the blue laws. We're going to talk about that a little bit tonight. I'm going to show you some pictures. So I'll tell you what, before we, let's just jump right into it, Lee. I had about 5 or 6 pictures from last week's show we didn't get to that show the construction of a major employer here in Rocky Mountain for the last, 40-some years at least. And many of you have worked there, know someone who does. I personally had several family members that worked there over the years. And whether you knew it as Abbott Laboratories or Pfizer or Hospira or whatever the name of the company was when you worked there, I found some pictures of the construction when Abbott Laboratories was first being built back in the 1960s. So, Lee, whenever you're ready to roll, let's go here with the first picture. And this actually goes back to 1968 when Abbott Laboratories was first being built out on 301. And this place has grown through a tremendous amount of growth over the years. It's just amazing to see how it was a big facility when it first got constructed, no doubt. But over the years, it's been added onto multiple times. It's been expanded, obviously, and it's just tremendous growth. Partly because of its proximity along the eastern seaboard of the United States. But certainly Abbott like I said, they've been known by 3 or 4 different names over the years. But initially it was Abbott Laboratories to those who knew it from the beginning. And so, Lee, let's just go ahead. It's about 3 or 4. We'll just go through these one at a time. This is showing a progression of the construction of the Abbott Laboratories facilities out here on 301 North. Just before you get into Battleboro on the right-hand side, for those of you that may not be familiar with the early construction of Abbott's in Rocky Mountain. And as you can see, it was a typical warehouse type construction, concrete slabs, steel girders and beams for construction, and then of course walls were built in amongst all this, and offices and cubicles were created, production lines later added, and it was just state-of-the-art construction back in 1968, of course. No expense was spared, and it's continued to be a success for Rocky Mount, and in fact, Eastern North Carolina for sure has felt the impact of Abbott Laboratories. It's just been a tremendous job creator, brought a tremendous amount of revenue to the area, and one we're proud to have as a neighbor here. Okay, let's go ahead to the next one then, and as I said, these are all just a collection of pictures. This was actually from about July, I think it was, of '68. Construction was still ongoing, but they were open, and you see some cars in there, employee parking, I'm sure, at that time. It looks quite a bit different now if you ride by that place and see what's going on out there. But again, this was 1968. I'm not sure exactly how long it took to build it. I want to say it actually started in the late 1967, and construction carried on for the first couple of years it was open. But in any case, this is from 1968, all these pictures we're showing now, except the very last one. Go ahead, Lee, let's go. I think there's one more in this grouping. And then, there you go. This is actually taken from 1980, and even in 1980, you can tell there's been some additions added on to the plant. Much bigger in this picture than it was in 1968 in those prior pictures, and of course even bigger now than it was then. So whether it's Abbott you remember, or Hospira, or Pfizer, certainly a company that's done well here in this area and been an asset to the city of Rocky Mount and the surrounding areas for many years now. Okay, Lee, I ran across some pictures. As I said, some of these were from last week's show that we didn't get to, but these just caught my attention when I was going through some more Charlie Killebreau's pictures, and a couple of them jumped out at me. I wanted to add them just because I thought they were neat pictures. No particular theme or storyline to go along with these, but you can go ahead and lead to the next picture. And back in 1968, that's Mr. Dick Cadell on the right-hand side. He ran a business here locally called Cadell Motors, and Plymouth sponsored a competition, if you will, amongst local high schools, and it was called the Plymouth Troubleshooting Contest. And so this was a picture taken out in front of Cadell Motors, and this picture here was from the winners from Booker T. Washington High School, who participated in the competition. And you see the two young fellows there both had a trophy. And the gentleman in the middle with the white shirt and tie looks awfully familiar to me, and I cannot for the life of me place his name. I want to say I had him either as a substitute teacher or a teacher in later years at Rocky Mount Senior High. As I said, this picture comes from 1968, and at that time he was obviously at Booker T. Washington. And I'm not exactly sure, I don't recall, I know we've covered this in a prior show, but off the top of my head I forgot exactly when Booker T. closed. But in any case, I do believe that gentleman in the white shirt with a black tie, for some reason I want to say he ended up at Rocky Mount Senior High. Oh, we got a call. Maybe someone remembers here. Let's get the call. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Hey, Randy, it's Tom Parker.
Hey, Tom, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. Isn't that Mr. Thompson, the shop teacher, the automotive shop teacher at Senior High in the white shirt?
I think it may be, Tom. I think you're exactly right. I knew he looked familiar to me, and I for the life of me could not place his name, but I believe you're exactly right. I think that's who that is.
Yep, I think that is. His wife was a math teacher or algebra teacher, if I'm not mistaken.
Miss Josie Thompson.
Yeah.
I had her too.
Yeah.
I sure did. That's right. You're exactly right, buddy. Yeah, okay. Well, appreciate you calling in.
Thank you. We're watching.
Well, thank you, buddy. Appreciate that. Have a good evening. There you go. Yeah, I knew it. When I first saw this picture, I said, I know him. But he and his wife, as Tom said, he and his wife both were teachers at Rocky Mount Senior High back in the 70s. I know, I'm not sure exactly when they came to teach over there, but had him for a shop class, and his wife, the math teacher, actually had her, I want to say she taught geometry maybe, could have been algebra, but in any case, I did have both of them during my duration over there at Senior High. So anyway, this is 68, and these were the winners from Booker T. Washington High School in the Plymouth Troubleshooting Awards contest that took place that year. Okay, let's go to the next picture, if you would, then. This next picture, this is from the Rocky Mount High School days, or Rocky Mount High School, I should say, and of course that's Dick Cadell on the left-hand side, and again, these fellows in the middle, the gentleman with the white shirt and tie is obviously the teacher. He too looks familiar to me, but I can't say I know who that is, nor either one of the two students. But obviously these two young men participated in the competition as well. I showed these pictures to Eric Dawson this week, and Eric, if you're watching, if you feel free to call in and refresh my memory. I can't say I remember Dick Cadell Motors. I knew Dick Cadell. I actually worked with him in later years. When he closed up his business and kind of went into a semi-retirement status, he went to work for Flake Chipley at Chipley Lincoln Mercury as a car salesman there. I think he and Mr. Chipley were old buddies from way back. And back in the 70s, I worked for Chipley Lincoln Mercury in the parts department. And Dick Cadell was one of our salesmen and when I worked there for Mr. Chipley. So he had, by that time, gotten out of the car business himself as far as being an owner and was just, as I said, working. I think he was really only part-time. He was in a retirement status, basically. But I remember him. He looks, in this picture, very much like I remember him. Oh, we got a call. Let's get this call. Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Randy, just letting you know that Cadell Motors was located right across from where Edgecombe Community College is at.
There you go. That's right.
Is that actually that space that's been pushed off now, and that where they're talking about building apartments or something?
That's right. That's right. I knew Eric had told me that, and I couldn't remember. I'd forgotten, but you're exactly right. That's what he told me.
Okay.
All right, buddy. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right. Bye-bye. There you go. For those that may not remember that, as the caller just said, that building has since been torn down, but it's directly across the street from Edgecombe Community College there on Tarver Street, where Cadell Motors was. And I think I may have inadvertently, okay, there we go. I had hit this hold button on the phone instead of releasing it, so okay. 407-1111 is the number. We'd love to hear from you. If you got any memories or any thoughts you'd like to share with us about anything you see tonight on the show, feel free to give us a call. Moving right along, these next couple of pictures just happen to be ones that we may have shown these in a prior show. They, in some regards, look very familiar to me, but Lee, you can go ahead and bring the next one up. This is, and by the way, all of these we're showing here in this segment are all from 1968, more from the Charlie Killebrew collection. But this, of course, is Main Street, Rocky Mountain. You're looking northeast here, and you see People's Bank there on the right-hand side. This picture, you can zoom in, and there's Epstein's there about just a little to the left of midway across the street from People's, of course. There's Lowe's Appliance Center down there just a little further north from Epstein's. And Rocky Mountain Public Office, there's just to the right there, People's Bank. I love looking at these old pictures and looking at the architecture. It's just, to me, it's just fascinating how these old buildings were decorated. I mean, there was just an awful lot of craftsmanship that went into, particularly around the windows and the openings and the top of the buildings. It's just a very ornate design that you just don't see much anymore. Everything now is very blocky, very smooth, and the transition from one part of the building to the next just is almost bland, if you will. And there was just so much detail in the workmanship that went into construction of these old buildings, and it's just a shame that so many have been lost, and so many are probably yet to be lost due to just negligence in the buildings and just not being taken care of. But anyway, we can go ahead and look at the next picture. This next one is, of course, across the railroad tracks. You're now on the west side of Main Street looking north, and you can see the construction grid work there on the front of that's Planters Bank. And I don't know exactly what was going on there. I guess they were putting a new front, perhaps painting. I'm not even sure exactly. But again, this is from 1968, and you're on the, as I said, the west side of Main Street looking north. And again, just neat old pictures here, and this is kind of what I remember as a child, downtown Rocky Mountain, what it looked like to me when I was a kid. So, okay, Lee, let's go ahead then. We've got this next picture here is actually from Pine View Cemetery in 1968. And I don't remember hearing about this. I was certainly around in 1968. I was a young fellow, obviously. But there was a Memorial Day service that took place out at Pine View Cemetery. And they placed wreaths on some of the veterans' graves out there, and it was just a really neat event. And you see the flag is lowered to half-mast there, or half-staff for those non-Navy types. In the Navy, we call it half-mast, and the rest of the world calls it half-staff. Same thing, but the flag was lowered halfway down the pole anyway. But in any case, this was from 1968 over at Pineview Cemetery. And I do apologize, I got these next two pictures out of sequence. I didn't realize until I got to the studio tonight, so I'll go ahead and tell you this next picture doesn't have anything to do with this picture, but I just thought it was a neat one. This was at the Tower Drive-In in 1968, and someone had captured a wild bobcat. And, you know, we do have bobcats around this part of the state, and I've had friends who've seen them. They've been caught in traps around whatever, but this was one that was caught in a trap, obviously, and was, I guess, out for the public to view out at the Tower Drive-In in 1968. There was no story behind this. It was just one. Charlie Killebrew took this picture, and the cat doesn't look too happy to be in that cage for sure. But in any case, all right, if you would, let's go to the next picture, because the next one was supposed to be in the place of this one. We're like, okay, here we go. This gentleman right here, some of you may recognize this gentleman. I did not, but his name was Francis Burney. And apparently Mr. Burney was a major in the Salvation Army, I'm guessing, because he was in this photo was captioned Major Francis Burney playing taps for Pineview Cemetery Memorial Day 1968. My grandfather was a slide trombone player, and so I always had a soft spot in my heart for musicians in general, but particularly those who played slide trombone. And I just thought this would be neat. I can almost close my eyes and hear taps being played on this slide trombone, and I'm sure it was a somber moment there when someone finished playing. But these are the kind of things that I would love to see come back to Rocky Mount. You know, we used to do so many of these types of events. We had parades throughout the year. We had special occasions where people would gather in public places, and we would honor certain things in certain time periods and certain historical events. And I don't know, it just seems like these kinds of things have gone by the wayside, and we just don't do these kinds of things like we used to, if at all. And I miss that. I think some of you would agree that it would be good to bring some of these things back. You know, during a show a couple of weeks ago, someone called in and made a comment about the Rocky Mount fairs that we used to have every year here. And it's my hope that maybe some enterprising young junior executive around town will pick that ball up and run with it again. I'd love to see Rocky Mount have a fair again. It was something I very much enjoyed as a child, and I know a lot of people around here enjoyed going to fairs around Rocky Mount. And it's a shame now you got to get in your car and drive. I think Wilson County still got a fair, and I think it's going on about this time frame. But this time of the year is when typically we had our local fair, and it's just a shame that we don't have it anymore. So if you know anybody who think might be interested in getting together an initiative to bring the fair back, kind of put a little bug in their ear, and let's see if we can't get the fair coming back to Rocky Mount. It's something I think we'd all enjoy. I tell you what, this is a good time for our first commercial break. Lee, bring it back to me. Folks, when we come back from our break, we're going to take a look at some more pictures. We're going to show you some articles and some stories about the blue laws in Rocky Mountain and indeed around the country that took place many, many years ago. So interesting little storyline there on the blue law. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more Wayback Wednesday.
You're now watching Wayback Wednesday, sponsored by Flores Glass and Mirror Company, servicing the area since 1977 with residential and commercial work.
I'm Daniel Moss, owner of Cornerstone Funeral Home, and I'd like to invite you and your family to give our family an opportunity to serve you in your time of need. And we offer a full line of funeral services, everything from visitations to graveside services to cremations on site with a live crematory, as well as a banquet hall to meet the catering needs of our families that we serve. We offer catering service. We offer refreshments prior to visitations and services of our family. And we want to invite you to come and experience the difference here at Cornerstone Funeral Home.
When faced with special care needs for elderly or disabled loved ones, families want compassionate, comforting care. That's Tender Touch Home Care Services' goal, providing the level of care we would expect for our own. With over 10 years of home care excellence, Tender Touch provides an array of services that keeps your loved one at home. From personal care, light housekeeping, errands, and meal preparation, to our private duty care program, which combines all of our home care offerings in one package.
Tender Touch Home Care Services, where your needs are our concern.
You're now watching Wayback Wednesday, sponsored by Flores Glass and Mirror Company, servicing the area since 1977 with residential and commercial work.
And we're back. Folks, for just tuning in, you're watching Wayback Wednesday. I'm Randy Adcock. Glad you could join us tonight. You know, during the break, I had a call from a viewer, and I just wanted to share some information with you. You know, I think I can safely speak for everyone associated with this TV station that we truly want to bring quality broadcasting to the public. It is certainly my goal and the goal of everyone that I'm aware of that's associated with this station. And so we are aware of the occasional hiccup or glitch, but I'd like to ask if you're watching this show either via cable TV or over rabbit ears or even over the internet, if you have any problems, any kind of problems at all, feel free to give us a call. We've got a call right now, as a matter of fact. Let's get this caller. Hello, caller, you on the air. Hello, caller.
I bring bad news to you.
That's all right.
But, look at here. The signal is breaking up badly. And at times, the no signal sign will come on the screen.
Okay.
So if you have one of your engineers or technicians to check on switches there, okay?
Let me ask you, how are you watching the show? Is it cable TV or over-the-air antenna?
Antenna.
And over-the-air antenna. Okay. All righty. I thank you so much. Like I say, we're working hard to resolve these issues and try to nail down where they're originating. We're not sure. There are other entities outside of the TV station that controls this signal and has at least an input in how it's broadcast out. So we're trying to nail down exactly where the problem lies. But thank you so much for giving us the feedback. I really appreciate it.
But you can't repair it if you don't know it's a problem.
Absolutely. That's exactly right.
So, we'll keep watching.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Have a good night. Yeah, you know, we actually I've spoken as recently as after last week's show with the general manager at the station, Sandra, and she expressed to me that she is absolutely 100% committed to getting some quality broadcast out there. But as I just said, we need to know where the problem is, and whether it's in the equipment here in the studio or whether it's in the broadcast mechanism that take place outside the building. And so the more information we can get from you, the viewer, the more chance we have of nailing the problem. I understand there's even monitors, I should say, in the control room where our people who control room techs that work in there are monitoring the show too. So we are indeed working, trying to get the best quality signal out to you. And so bear with us. We're going to get these little technical glitches ironed out, hopefully sooner rather than later. Okay, having said that, it's a good segue into the next section here. Before we get into the topic about the blue laws, and this was something that Eric Dawson brought this up to me after last week's show, that it might be interesting to take a look at these blue laws, and he was right. I went to digging into them and read some interesting articles and went back several decades, and indeed, as I said earlier at the top of the show, blue laws go back to the 1600s and 1700s. We've got another call. Let's get this call. Hello, caller. You're on the air. Hello, caller.
Yeah, something's wrong with y'all on my TV. It's all weird and can't see a picture, and it's pink and blurred, and
Okay, let me ask you, how are you watching this? Is it over the cable TV or over the antenna airwaves?
I have Suddenlink, but it's not on that. I got one in my kitchen that's not on the Suddenlink, thing that is bundled.
Yes, ma'am.
It's the one in my kitchen is not like the one in my den, and my den possibly could be working, but I think my husband's watching something else on that. But the one in my kitchen is definitely not working at all.
All right, and that's over an antenna over the airwaves, is that right?
I think so, because it's in my bundle,
You don't have cable TV hooked up to it, in other words?
Right.
Okay.
It's just a little kitchen flat screen thing, a small one, that I keep in my kitchen.
Yes, ma'am.
But
Well,
I could check in my den.
Well, I don't want to interrupt your husband's basically.
It's not working in the den, my husband said, either. It's not working down there on our Suddenlink bundle thing.
Okay. All right, then we're going to be tracing this down. I thank you so much for your feedback. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, this is the kind of feedback we need. We need to know that, the signal's not getting to you in a quality manner, and I do apologize. We're certainly looking into this, and we intend to get to the bottom of it and get it resolved as soon as possible. So Lee is listening to these calls too, our control room tech tonight, and so he's keeping an eye on things back there for us, and so hopefully we'll have an answer to these problems soon, but bear with us and we will get them resolved, I promise. Okay. All right. Before we get into the blue law, and we've got some articles and so forth and pictures to share with you about that. But before we get into that, I stumbled across a couple of the pictures I just thought were kind of good pictures that I wanted to share. Again, these next two don't have any particular storyline with them. It's just a couple of pictures that I stumbled across that some of you may remember, some of you may not. So with that being said, Lee, let's go ahead. I think the next one should be picture number 13. And for those of you that are familiar with the area, and particularly the Sharpsburg area around Rocky Mount, you'll recognize this next building. Once we get it up on the screen there, it should be any moment now. It's coming, Lee, right? Yeah. Okay. There you go. This is actually NEW Academy over in Sharpsburg. And many of you may remember this. Some of you probably went to school here. But this picture was in that grouping from 1968 of Charlie Killebrew pictures. The building is no longer there. I'm not sure exactly when it was torn down. I know I ride by there periodically, and I have looked several times lately, and just to see if I could see any semblance of it or any remains of it. And I've not been able to see anything, so apparently it's long gone. But again, NEW Academy over in Sharpsburg in 1968. This next picture is actually one that is a gentleman, some of you may remember, Mr. Clarence Capps, run Capps Grocery down here on Falls Road, the corner of Falls Road and Ridge Street for a number of years. Father of Bernie Capps. Bernie was certainly a well-known figure in local sports, particularly with Rocky Mount Senior High School. He was active in football, baseball, as everything from a bat boy to a ball boy to just a cheerleader for the teams. I remember very fondly both Bernie and his father, Mr. Capps, here. But this was taken 1974, and I'm not certain, but I think this was right outside of Mr. Capps' store. I'm not 100% positive, don't quote me on that. But in any case, this was Mr. Clarence Capps from 1974. Okay, I mentioned at the top of the show we're going to talk a little bit about blue laws, and I have some very vivid memories of not being able to buy certain things on Sunday, certain stores not being open for business, in fact, on Sunday. And I don't know, I guess I just kind of assumed at that time that was something that was unique to this area. And so when Eric Dawson mentioned to me after last week's show that I might want to do some digging into the blue laws and particularly the history of blue laws in this area, I said, well, that's an interesting concept, and so I did that. And I got to reading and looking through the newspapers.com website, and a couple of little comical things that turned up I just wanted to share with you. The first one is actually, with that, go ahead, Lee, and put up the first picture. Item number 15 is actually an article, and This is from 1921, and you see the headline there says, "Planned fight upon blue law scope, the Anti-Blue Law League of America to hold a convention in Washington." Now this is from Washington, D.C., obviously, but what I quickly realized during my research was that there were blue laws all over the country, indeed all over the world, and they were all, at least to some degree, founded around a religious principle that Sunday was the Sabbath. You shouldn't work on Sunday, businesses shouldn't be open, and I think there was some variation certainly of the law around the world, and certainly in the United States there were variations of the law. But it seemed like every municipality, every town, every city, even every state had different interpretations of what a blue law was. But I stumbled across a couple of articles that just kind of tickled my funny bone, and one of them I want to read a little bit of it here. Many of you remember Mr. Vernon Seacrest. He was, among other things, an excellent storyteller. For many years he wrote an article in the Rocky Mount Telegram called Main Street by Vernon Seacrest. And this was from 1938, and I'll just read a little bit of it here. It says, "Eastern Carolina fishermen, taking no stock in the ancient admonition that lightning will strike you if you work on Sunday, formed and disbanded, crisscrossed, then formed some more huddles Friday, and finally descended upon their favorite sporting goods dealers, who in turn descended upon the newspaper office, or more specifically, yours truly, who in turn descended upon his Associated Press printers, his typewriter keys, telegraph messenger boys, and the telephone. The result? In about 45 minutes after the first onslaught of fishermen, the headlines had been disbanded, the machines were at rest, the receiver was on its hook, and the fishermen were off digging bait because a misunderstanding had been cleared up. Cause of the ruckus? Rumors emanating from various and sundry sources, together with a misleading article in the Josephus Daniels 5-cent first edition of Thursday, which stated in a headline, "Conservation Board prohibits Sunday fishing." And in a news paragraph, on the advice of Attorney General A.A. Sewell, a substantial fine will be imposed on Sunday fishing, and game wardens will be authorized to enforce the rule, which heretofore has been in the province of Maine offices under the ancient blue law. Page 2 here. Got kind of blurry there. This is from 1938. It's a little bit hard to read in some places. But the bottom line was there was an article that appeared in the newspaper, and it seemed to imply that there was a blue law going to affect fishing, and it got the fishermen all up in arms, and so there was just a flurry of activity around town by local fishermen who, some of them knew Vernon Seacrest, and they, as the article says, descended upon him demanding answers, and so he made some phone calls. He says, "I called Jimmy Ricks, who was running around over town looking like a heron that had just inadvertently swallowed a bait. I couldn't find him. I then called Bill Joyner, another bait and tackle dealer, after the sportsman left him alone long enough to answer the phone. Called dealer Dave Edwards, and he was in the middle of his rejoicing, confessed that he had to leave the store at one time in order to keep fishermen from taking his scalp." So fishermen got all upset because the blue law was supposedly going to make it illegal to fish on Sunday. So obviously it was a misunderstanding. It didn't happen. But in 1938, in 1939, I stumbled across this article that said, and this was talking about a gentleman who was actually charged with shooting someone else. I don't think it was a murder. I think the person that was shot lived through this. But anyway, it says, the morning after court, Solicitor Linwood Elmore referred to the statute number 3956 in the 1935 North Carolina Code, which reads, "If any person shall, except in defense of his own property, hunt on Sunday with a dog, or shall be found off his premises with him a shotgun, rifle, or pistol, he shall be guilty of a misdemeanor and pay a fine not exceeding $50 or be imprisoned not exceeding 30 days. So in 1935, it was literally against the law to be caught with your gun outside your home. And you could be fined or put in jail if you were caught with a gun, whether it be a handgun, a shotgun, a rifle. If you were off your own property, you were in trouble if you got caught with it. So that just kind of gives you an idea of the scope and breadth of some of these blue laws. They were very strict in nature, and most were kind of seated in some kind of observance of the sanctity of the holy day, the Sabbath day, and that it was just believed strongly that you shouldn't be out doing anything unless you're going to church, and then when you finish church you go back home and you stay there. You don't work, you don't go hunting, you don't go fishing, you don't go shopping, you don't buy anything, and that was the gist of the blue laws themselves. So Lee, let's go ahead then to the next picture. We'll get into a couple of these, and that's the article I just read there, the story about the guy who shot someone and went on to say about you couldn't be out on Sunday with a gun in your hand. So you can go ahead, Lee, and go past that one. This next article here is just another one that appeared, and I apologize. I didn't realize when I say this it was going to be this hard to read. But in any case, it was just one more indication of the types of things that were prohibited from being sold during the blue law period. And it primarily was, the bottom line was they didn't want businesses to be open. So even towns and municipalities that had kind of bent the law a little bit and give some leeway were still somewhat rigid in what you could do. And so it took many years before the blue law began to be cracked, if you will, and some opportunity for businesses to be open and actually sell some products. So fast forward to let's go to the next picture, Lee. In 1967, there was actually a new business that opened up in town, and we showed this picture on a show a couple of weeks ago. This was the grand opening from 1967 of the Zip Mart here in Rocky Mount, and it says they refer to as Zip Dairy Mart. And you see here, this is Mayo Body was on the right-hand side there, and Bobby Dunn on the left-hand side. But this was a picture of the grand opening of the first of two Zip Dairy Marts that were opening in Rocky Mount. And the story goes that they used this Zip Dairy Mart, kind of as a pretense to say, okay, we're not going to sell anything that could be considered shameful or sacrilegious. We're going to sell ice creams and milk and bread, that kind of stuff. But in 1967, the blue law was still in place in Rocky Mount, and there were some really severe restrictions on what you could and could not sell on a Sunday in Rocky Mount. And so debate had already started prior to this, obviously, but it continued on. In fact, merchants that were eager to attract and bring in some of that Sunday business started going to city council meetings and county commissioner meetings, voicing their opinion that the blue law was antiquated. It was certainly hindering business and commerce, and other municipalities and cities had repealed theirs. We need to repeal ours. So Lee, if you would, let's go on to 1972 in the next picture. And this is actually, believe it or not, 1972, this is Nashville. Okay, let me get this call first. Hello, caller, you on the air? Hello, caller.
Good evening.
Yes, sir.
I called a little earlier and complained about the signal.
Yes, sir.
Okay, the signal is coming in beautifully now.
Great.
So keep the adjustments where they are. Thank you now.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. I'll pass that on to Lee. Whatever you're doing out there, Lee, keep doing it. It's working. Okay. This is a newspaper article here from 1972. And I'm not going to read this whole thing, but this is from Nashville, right down the road, little Nashville. And it said, you see the headline, Council repeals town's blue law. Final action of Nashville's proposed Sunday's blue law ordinance, its repeal, was taken by the town council during its regular meeting Tuesday night. Town council members were unanimous in their decision to repeal the law and requested that town manager Mike Ruffin contact the town's attorney who would draw up a nuisance law. The proposed blue law ordinance was drafted as a possible replacement to the town's 1941 ordinance. It would have prohibited sale of several types of merchandise, but would have allowed the Sunday sale of a number of items considered to be essential, such as food. The town council had the option of adopting a proposed ordinance as written, adopting a revised ordinance, or scrapping the ordinance altogether. More than 20 persons, most representing Nashville area food establishments, opposed the ordinance at a public hearing held February 6th and said at that time the ordinance would be detrimental to business, employees, and consumers. They also said that a nuisance law would be more satisfactory than the proposed blue law. So, as you can tell, there was some mixed feelings both from the public and merchants about these blue laws, even after the fact that this one was repealed in Nashville in 1972. There was still some controversy about it. Fast forward on, we go to the next picture is actually an article from, go ahead and lead to the next one if you would. And you can zoom out a little bit on this. I think this kind of got blown up a little bit here when I was saving these. This is from the Chamber of Commerce. And the Chamber of Commerce in 1979 actually kind of put out a joint statement that they were in favor. This is from the Rocky Mount Chamber of Commerce, I should say. They were in favor of repealing the blue law. And so, you know, again, there was mixed feelings, mixed emotions, mixed thoughts about the importance of the blue law, whether or not it was sacrilegious to open up a business on Sunday. But the point is, there was a movement underway to get this law repealed and to get these businesses open on Sunday and get people out shopping and doing commerce that they would not otherwise have done. And I just realized we about snuck past our second commercial break. So Lee, I tell you what let's do. Let's go to our next break. When we come back, folks, we're going to talk a little bit more about blue laws, and I've got some more pictures to share with you. So don't go anywhere, and we'll be right back with more Wayback Wednesday after these words from our sponsors.
Servicing the area since 1977 with residential and commercial work.
I'm Daniel Moss, owner of Cornerstone Funeral Home, and I'd like to invite you and your family to give our family an opportunity to serve you in your time of need. And we offer a full line of funeral services, everything from visitations to graveside services to cremations on site with a live crematory, as well as a banquet hall to meet the catering needs of our families that we serve. We offer catering service. We offer refreshments prior to visitations and services of our family. And we want to invite you to come and experience the difference here at Cornerstone Funeral Home.
When faced with special care needs for elderly or disabled loved ones, families want compassionate, comforting care. That's Tender Touch Home Care Services' goal, providing the level of care we would expect for our own. With over 10 years of home care excellence, Tender Touch provides an array of services that keeps your loved one at home. From personal care, light housekeeping, errands, and meal preparation, to our private duty care program, which combines all of our home care offerings in one package.
Tender Touch Home Care Services, where your needs are our concern.
You're now watching Wayback Wednesday, sponsored by Flores Glass and Mirror Company, servicing the area since 1977 with residential and commercial work.
And we're back. Folks, during the break I was talking with Lee, our control room technician, and we are making some notes here. I'm making notes. He's making notes. And so we're going to compile all our notes and get them into the powers that be. Honestly, we don't know what this problem is, where the problem's originating from, but we absolutely intend to nail it down, track it down, and get it resolved. So I apologize on behalf of the entire station for these problems with the audio and the video, but I'll give you my word, we're working on it, we will get them resolved. So hang with us. Okay. We're talking about the Blue Law, the Rocky Mount Blue Law before the break. And as I said, it wasn't just Rocky Mount. There were blue laws all over the country. In 1979, Nashville repealed their blue law. And I think that probably started a little bit more intense activity here in Rocky Mount. I saw multiple articles from 1980 throughout the year in 1980 referencing several groups and private citizens too, for that matter, that were actively pursuing trying to get this blue law in Rocky Mount repealed. And there were several city council meetings where the public attended and spoke about their desire to see the blue law repealed in Rocky Mount. And as I said, the National repealed theirs in '79, starting in 1980. It was just a flurry of activity. Ironically, it still took a few years. And Lee, let's jump back into our picture. We've got a couple more headlines to show you here. Just some a couple odd. And again, there you go. This was from 1980 right here. I mentioned a lot of activities going on in '80. And the council was hearing from people, as I said, merchants and local citizens. And so there was some pressure. I'm sure the council members were feeling some pressure from not only the public and the merchants, but from churches, obviously, who did not want the blue law to be repealed. And so several council meetings, this was a focal point of the meeting, was the blue law and repealing the blue law. And so this was in, I think this was March of 1980. The city council basically just kind of kicked this can down the road, to use a common phrase. They just didn't want to deal with it at the time. And understandably so. It was a very touchy topic still. And even though there was a lot of support for removing or repealing the blue law, there was an awful lot of sentiment that said, no, it needs to stay in place. And so I think there was concern that once the blue law was repealed, a bunch of bad things would happen, and I don't think that was the case, but again, there was a lot of concern about what could happen. So anyway, okay, so let's do one more, Lee, I think from 1980, and this next picture basically was, I think, the Rocky Mount City Council's first attempt at not necessarily repealing the law, but kind of breaking the ice, if you will. This was in 1980, October 1980. Blue law amended to allow Sunday business. So this was a major breakthrough for local merchants who wanted to open up on Sunday and conduct business. There was still a very restrictive amount of guidelines that went along with this amended blue law, if you will. And this is a long article, I'm not going to try to read it, but basically, it basically just kind of loosened up and let stores that were previously not even allowed to open, at least they could open now. There were certain things they couldn't sell, alcohol being one of them, but they could at least open their doors and they could sell, snacks and food items and milk and those kind of things. I read an article that someone who attended a city council meeting and was saying, look, if a woman's circuit breaker or fuse blows in a house and her freezer goes out and her husband's out of town, whatever, she can't even go to the corner store and buy a fuse to put back in her fuse box to get the freezer back going again. And so there was quite a bit of testimony like that helped the city council get to a point where they could feel safe in amending the blue law. So in 1980 they made a pretty significant amendment that allowed businesses to open. And then let's go to the next picture, Lee. 7 years later, now keep in mind, in 1980, they actually amended the law, and in November of 1987, the blue law in Rocky Mount was repealed. And the irony here is, after all this discussion and literally decades of conversation, and for 7 years continually from the time it was amended to the time it was repealed, there was a whole slew of activity by both pro and con interest in Rocky Mount about the blue law, and yet in November of 1987, when the city council finally voted to repeal the blue law, you can see the headline, "No controversy, council takes unanimous action." And I want to read a little bit of this because I recognize some of these council members. I've known some of these people, in fact, and I know, just because I know these people, that there had to be some queasy stomachs, if not some rattled nerves. But I read real quickly. It says, "The Sunday blue law, which one city official called a dead issue, was laid to rest Monday night. The Rocky Mount City Council moved unanimously to repeal the ordinance and allow sales of all items excluding beer and wine on Sunday." Councilman Leonard Wiggins told the Telegram that the public appeared to favor repealing the law. "I just really don't think there was any controversy over it," he said. "I'm concerned about employees down the line being forced to work on Sundays," Councilman James T. Hubbard told the Telegram. "But the blue law was impossible to enforce, which made it ridiculous." The 1974 ordinance had prohibited the sale of certain items such as milk, eggs, and meat prior to 1 p.m. and after 11 p.m. Area grocery and convenience stores had pushed for either a repeal or stricter enforcement. Farm Fresh Supermarket at 131 Southwestern Boulevard is one of the major proponents of repeal. The store has been open on Sundays selling grocery items. Police recently checked several stores and found 5 violators. Instead of arrests being made, officers handed out copies of the blue law to store operators. At least 15 people attended last night's meeting, apparently ready to voice support for a repeal, but the council's unanimous decision voiced silence their concern. So, bottom line here, the council finally decided, okay, let's move forward on this, let's put it to rest, and in November 1987, Rocky Mount's blue law was repealed once and for all. And so, and there's still been some restrictions that have kind of waned over the years, particularly regarding things like alcohol and cigarettes, those kind of things. Now you can pretty much buy anything you want to around Rocky Mount. But it took a while to get there. And let's go to the next article, Lee. This was only a few days after the city council voted, and this was an opinion op-ed piece in the Telegram dated November 12th, 1987. And it said, when Rocky Mount City Council repealed the Sunday blue law Monday, there was no controversy. There was not even discussion. The action was unanimous. Apparently, the issue had become a dead one since the early 70s when the law was enacted. Convenience stores long had been selling all sorts of prescribed items throughout the morning, and some larger stores had been opening for general business before 1 p.m. time that were stipulated in the law. The Telegram previously outlined some of the strange provisions about what could and couldn't be sold during certain hours. Councilman James Hubbard summed it up thusly: it was ridiculous. Some people will continue to have reservations about working or shopping on a Sabbath. No one is forced to take a job with Sunday hours, and the advice of Minister Charles Coates in a recent Telegram column also applies. Christians with reservations simply need not patronize a business on Sunday, he wrote, unless an emergency exists. So the bottom line was, it was a dead issue in many people's minds, had been for some time, and it was time to move on and get the blue law repealed, and that's exactly what they did. I've mentioned before, one of my favorite sections of the Rocky Mount Telegram when I was a child growing up was something called the Junior Editor's Quiz. And go to the next picture if you would, Lee. This is from 1987 also. And it was a kid's story. And sometimes it helps to look at things from a kid's perspective, or at least be told or explain something as it would be explained to a child. And the question here is, what is a blue law? And the answer is quite solid. It says, a blue law is any strict puritanical law that forbids certain activities on a Sunday. The term blue law was used to describe them because a series of such laws enacted in New Haven Colony in Connecticut in 1781 was once bound in blue paper. The first Sunday law in the United States was enacted in Virginia in 1617. It punished a person's failure to attend church on Sunday with a fine payable in tobacco. During most of the colonial period, church laws governed the behavior of the colonists in almost all activities, especially in New England. Such things as cooking, shaving, cutting hair, or making beds was prohibited. The most burdensome Sunday blue laws were threefold. Church attendance was compulsory, work and recreation were prohibited, and unnecessary travel was forbidden. By the 1880s, people were exercising their right to religious freedoms and compulsory church attendance was declining. The blue laws were now mostly laws that limited business and entertainment on Sundays. So that's a pretty good overview of how blue laws came into existence and how they ended up. And personally, I'm glad to see them gone. So anyway, I think we've got time for one or two more pictures here, Lee, if you would. We'll blow through a couple real quickly here before we call it a night. And this is just a couple of ads I found in the paper I thought were neat. Evans Studio from 1955. The next one, Lee, if you would. This is from 1955 also. Radio Service Shop, the Television Center. Notice Walter Mears down the bottom corner. Oh, we got a call. Let's get this call right quick. Hello, caller. You're on the air.
All right, I'll be very quick. I know you're getting ready to move on.
Okay.
Today in the Brownsville Library in the 1966 City Directory, there was no listing whatsoever for Body Noel Enterprises.
Mm-hmm.
There was no listing in there for the Zip Dairy Marts. And then 2 years later, in the same book, not the 1968 book, Body Noel Enterprises had come into existence with their address on Sunset Avenue, and the Zip Dairy Marts were listed in 1968.
Mm-hmm.
They had one located at 700 Raleigh Street, that's over there near the Dairy Bar, and the other one was at 831 Raleigh Road. That would be on the west side of town, near where a white supermarket used to be.
Yep.
And that was when that was going on and unfolding. Nick and Mayo Body were bumping heads with the city and everything else about trying to get the blue law tended to in the year of 1968.
That's amazing. It took 20 years almost to get that law repealed entirely, but yep.
That's what's in the city directories.
Uh-huh.
And that's clear evidence of when the homestead got done away with on the ocean front at Virginia Beach.
Mm-hmm.
To derive proceeds to start Body Noel Enterprises in the mid-1960s, 4 years after Hardy's number 1 came into existence. And in that Body Noel listing, they were given, in that listing, that they were also franchisees for Hardy's Food Systems.
There you go.
1968.
Okay, got it, buddy.
Right.
All right, thank you now. Have a good one. All right, Lee, bring it back to me. Folks, that's going to do it for us tonight. We've run slam out of time. I think the callers so much have called in and shared information with us. Again, I do apologize for the technical difficulties. We're going to get those resolved, and hopefully we'll get them resolved before next week's show. We'll keep our fingers crossed anyway. In the meantime, folks, have yourselves a great week. Take care of yourselves and be kind to each other, people. We'll see you next week and more Wayback Wednesday. Good night.
Wayback Wednesday, sponsored by Floors Glass and Mirror Company, servicing the area since 1977 with residential and commercial work.